Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cooking with Big Mark.
Hello, folks. Today we're going to talk about apples, probably one of the more famous fruits of our existing world and the old world. Apple today keeps the doctor away. The apple, of course, was the subject of the forbidden fruit, the tree supposedly with Adam and Eve. And it's just been a fruit that's been around for eons of years. When it's come down to now, the sweet apples that we know are very different from the original apples. And they've been spliced together by root splicing over years, and people have developed them. Probably the normal apple you eat in your supermarket probably has got about 2,000 or 3,000 parents. It's how long it's taken for these different special varieties to evolve. Apples really, a lot of people think apples started in America. Well, they didn't. They started in Kazakhstan, or Kazakhstan rather. And the capital of Kazakhstan is Alma-Ata, and that means full of apples. And that's where they all came from. And people go back, they say from 5,000 to 10,000 years BC, they can find evidence of apples somehow. But in the 1500s, apple seeds were sort of all over Europe. The Greeks, the Romans, the Etruscans, they all cultivated apples. 200 BC, when the Latin Romans went up into Britain, they brought the apples at that time to them. And then in the 1500s to 1600s, with the explorers coming into the United States, but mostly started out in Mexico and South America. And that's where the apple got introduced into our hemisphere. The first apples I ever discovered in the United States were these wild sour crab apples. That was really it. It was not the apple we know today. Apple's introduction in the United States really came from the Puritans down in Plymouth when they came over. They brought apple seeds with them and planted and cultivated them, and were very successful with it. George Washington and Jefferson were big apple orchard cultivators. John Adams used to have a glass of hard cider every day for breakfast. He wasn't an alcoholic. He was doing it because when you make apple cider, the fermentation kills bacteria. And that sometimes that drink was safer than some of the wells that would be, around in those days. People didn't know how to, sanitize it as well. So that was, that's where he had the cider. A lot of other people did the same thing. So the apple business. But those are all the apples in those first things were just that. They were called cider apples. They had a tartness to them and a sourness to them, which of course, when they under fermentation, sugar and alcohol, everything, that's how it became sweet. But all the famous painters going back, and poets, they all celebrated apples. Frost, Dickinson, Caravaggio painted them a lot. A lot of the impressionists did the same thing. You see all the still lifes. A lot of them do feature apples. Then the other thing, Johnny Appleseed, people always remember that great story about. Well, that's a true story. There was a Johnny Appleseed. His name was actually Johnny Crawford, and he was from Leominster, Mass. And that's where he started. And he was an itinerant preacher, and he used to go out over the countryside, and in order to support himself, he'd bring apple seeds, and he'd stake out a piece of land or buy it, I guess, and get the rights to it. Then he'd plant apple seeds and do it properly, lay out like a small orchard, and then he'd sell it to somebody there. After he'd done it, put a fence around it to keep deer and animals out. And he told them how to cultivate and how to take care of the trees. And that's how he did one across the country. And that's
he was kind of flipping orchards.
Yeah, that's right. He was doing that. And it was, I guess exactly it, Max, flipping orchards. And he went across the country doing that. So that the Johnny Appleseed story is actually a very true story. The apple today is just a total thing, and the way they handle apples today is a totally different handling thing. I was watching a documentary on a place in Rhode Island called Holcomb Farms, Holcomb Orchards actually, and current owner, who was the fourth generation owner, talked about the evolution of how they plant and treat apples. And I remember the day when Mark was young, we used to go with some of his young friends out to Harvard, Mass, and pick apples. And of course, the boys always want to, get up on the ladder, get the highest apples. Whoever get the highest, of course, they're going to fall off or break their leg or whatever arm. So that was always sort of an antsy type of atmosphere until they were all picked and the bags were full. Nowadays, they go down the way apples are planted. They are all what they call dwarf trees, dwarf roots. They are never these 30 or 40 foot sprawling trees with branches all over the place. They are trimmed almost like you see espaliered vines or espaliered in a vineyard. You see in rows. The apples now are the same thing. They're just taller and higher, but they're done in rows and they're grown on trellises. And they're about 11 to 12 feet high. You have rows in between so they can go down with tractors and equipment and deal with them on platforms to keep them trimmed. And they have another thing they do now is to trim in the summer as opposed to the winter, which their fathers did in the old days. And they keep the foliage is never more than 2 feet from the trellis area. So it's very accessible. They go down, they take small apples and pluck them off so the other ones get bigger. This trellis thing gives them much more light as a result, and they call them literally fruit walls, and that's what they are. And some of them are a little taller than others, depending on the type of apple. So it's a whole new ball game. Then they have this machine like a tractor with a platform on it. The platform goes down the road in between these things, and the workers just lean over on the tractor, which fills the thing. As I said, they're no more than 2 feet to the trunk, and they just pick all the apples from 6 feet up. And those are all cleaned by the workers. However, the ones from 6 feet down are left for all the people to come and pick. And of course, that eliminates all the use of ladders. And so it's no longer becoming a scary experience, but one that the kids can deal with and everybody can pick them, pick very easily. So that's how apples have evolved over the years. And as I say, they clone them in myriads of ways to developing. They're doing even today. The Red Delicious apple, which is one of the first sweeter ones to come out, he's sitting on some guy's fence in Iowa. Next to an orchard, it was brown. And he looked at it. He said it's kind of an odd shape compared to the normal apple shape. And he tasted it. He couldn't believe it. Well, it had cloned itself somehow and evolved into that apple. Of course, then he made the seeds, and of course that became, when I was young, that was really the most outside of the normal apples, Macoun, all those, Granny Smiths and all this stuff. The Red Delicious was the real sweet apple. Now you've got the Honey Crisp, you've got Fuji's, you've got just myriads of kinds. So the apple keeps very well, so it can be stored. But the United States is not the biggest producers of apples. China is, surprisingly enough. And when you get the apples that we get in the fall, obviously are fresh up until probably January, February. Then from January, February to March, they've been stored in cold storage. But anything you buy in the apple world after March, April, and May probably come from China, not from here. So this is, I'm not really going to talk about cooking with them, but there are so many things you can do. And one of the simplest things I think I've done with apples is just a little tart. Just take a little piece of puff paste, or you even take a roll of toast, a piece of bread, and roll it out thin. Spread a little mascarpone or cream cheese, flavor it with maple syrup or brown sugar. Slice a few apples on it. Put a little sugar in that and some butter. Pop it in the oven, and you got yourself an open-faced apple tart. Very simple, very easy, and very tasty. So that's the apple. That's the apple for your eye today, and keeps the doctor away. I don't know how it does with COVID, but anyway, that's the apple story.
I had myself on mute, sorry. You don't want to be promoting alternative COVID therapies. So for once, at least in recent times, I have chosen something that goes with Dad's theme, as opposed to being an outlier. We are doing cider, and this is from Normandy, Etienne Dupont, And this is a family that's had orchard holdings in Normandy since 1887. And this is their organic cider. It's made from about 70% bittersweet apples and about 30% more acidic fruit. Just getting the cork out here. You want to ease it out. Just want it to whisper. Ooh, perfect. All right, so a lot of Americans associate hard cider with, woodchuck, which was, I think, probably the first mass market one. But different cider producing countries and areas within countries have very different styles, and I like the Normandy style a lot. It's going to be dry, more akin to wine than soda pop. And this is done in stainless steel with indigenous yeasts. Yeah, the nose, you're getting almost everything except apple. I mean, you do get I'm smelling pear and quince. There's almost like a woody note, even though obviously it's stainless. It's just slightly off dry and is a really a cider that would be very food friendly, I think. It's just slightly frizzante and it's very mild, a very satisfying mouthfeel, kind of bready. There's a lot of great ciders on the market right now. You don't have to look to France. Locally, Virtue Cider, Right B Cider, Vandermill are all ciders that I've tried and liked. And I'm not a huge cider person, but for instance, somebody who doesn't really like to drink alcohol for the holidays, they want to have a couple of glasses of cider, it's 5.5 ABV, nice and low, or you can enjoy it if you do like sipping over a period of hours as a session beverage, because it's about half, the alcohol of even the lowest alcohol wines, which are around 10. So this has been Cooking with Big Mark. Thank you all for joining us.